started now. So we do just like to let everybody know that captions are available on Teams should you require them. You can turn these on and off for yourself. If you go to the three little dots and the more button, they're underneath speech and language, and you can turn those on if you require. So it is an interactive session today. We would like you to get involved, ask some questions, but please do, as I've mentioned, just mute your microphone if you're not talking, just to get rid of any of that background noise. There is also quite a large group today, so if you did want to say something rather than type something, there is a raise hand function in Teams, which would be fantastic if you could use that to allow us to try and get to as many people as possible. But alternatively, we do have the chat window where you can type in your questions. We also have Slido available today, so there is a QR code on the screen. So if you have a mobile phone or device, tablet or anything with you, you can scan that QR code and get into Slido, or you can join at slido.com and you will need to enter the code for this session, which is 632 780. Don't worry about remembering that. It will come up every time we have an opportunity for a Slido, but Slido does just give you the opportunity to ask any questions you want anonymously. If you do pop something in the chat or speak to us, obviously, we will see your name and everyone will see your name, but if you would prefer to ask something anonymously, please do use Slido. And just to note that there will be a feedback link shared with you at the end. Ourselves and Catherine at Foothold would really appreciate your feedback from today's session. So if you could just take a few minutes to fill that in for us, that would be fantastic. So now I'll just hand you over to Catherine. She's just going to give you a little bit of an intro for Foothold.
Hello, everyone. As you may be able to hear, my voice is leaving me today, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet and hand over to people who do have voices. But yes, I'm Catherine Drake. I'm the Communications and Digital Events Officer at Foothold, and we're joined today by Lucy Woodcock and Lizi Green, who will be discussing how to make people with neurodiversity included in the workplace and learning environment, and celebrating all things neurodiversity. They're from AbilityNet, which is a UK charity that believes the power of digital technology should be available to everyone. So next slide, please. Just a little bit about Foothold. We've been supporting engineers and their families since 1890, and it's our 134th birthday next week. We're funded by engineers for engineers, making their lives better right now. Next slide, please. I won't read it out, but here is the support we offer. And if you get in touch with us via our contact form, we will work with you to decide how best to support you, whatever your needs are. Next slide, please. Here's our digital support. This is my remit, this is my area. So we have a free webinar every month that we offer to all Foothold members, community members. Expert blogs, we have a lot on neurodiversity at the moment, so go to myfoothold.org, scroll down, lots of neurodiversity blogs. The Foothold app offers financial and legal advice and support. The Wellbeing Hub offers physical and mental health advice and resources. And our Differently Wired Hub, this is our neurodiverse package of support. And we've got expert information, free downloads, advice, stories from our engineers in the form of videos and blogs. If you head to myfoothold.org and just click at the top in I'm interested in neurodiversity support, you can sign up for free today, and there's a wealth of information there for our engineering community. So it'd be great to see you there. Next slide, please. Again, I won't read the slide as I usually do because you don't want to hear this horrible voice, but we would be really grateful if you would consider making a donation to our charity today. Just £25 a year can help us continue the supports that we offer engineers through life's challenges. If you head to myfoothold.org/donate direct, it would make a lot of difference to our engineering community. You have a look at that. And next slide, please. So over to our speakers. Really excited for today's webinar. It wraps up our celebrations for Neurodiversity Celebration Week, and I'm really looking forward to hearing how we can support our neurodivergent colleagues, or if you yourself have neurodiversity, and celebrating our difference. So over to you, ladies. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Catherine. So yes, so sorry, let me just get my slides back. I'm juggling lots of different screens today, so we will get there in the end. So just a little bit of a plan for today's session. So we're going to be talking about neurodivergence, lived experience. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting some really bad feedback. I'm just gonna. Sorry, I've just done a mute all again because I was getting some terrible feedback off myself then. Talking about lived experience, Lucy is going to be talking to us about her lived experience. We're going to look at some assistive technologies and looking at removing barriers. So as I mentioned before, this session is designed to be interactive. So we'd love to have your input, ask your questions, and just get you involved with the session today. So a little bit of an introduction to us. So my name is Lizi Green and I am a workplace and education inclusion consultant at AbilityNet. And I have been with the charity for 7 and a bit years now. So I've worked across lots of different sectors within AbilityNet. I've done lots of different things within the organisation, but now primarily I am involved in developing and delivering training to clients across our workplace and education sectors. I also am really passionate about assistive technology, especially it being readily available to all. So I kind of focus on things that are low cost and free in terms of assistive technology. And I'm joined today by Lucy, if you'd like to give a little introduction to yourself.
Yes, my name's Lucy. I'm an accessibility consultant and team leader. I've been working at AbilityNet for a couple of years now, and I tend to spend my time heading our user research team, which does user research of mobile apps and websites with a diverse range of users. And the other thing I spend my time doing is accessibility audits for digital platforms, checking that they meet the required standards.
Fantastic, thanks Lucy. So just to start us off with a little bit of an introduction to neurodivergence and neurodiversity as a whole. So neurodivergence is a term that recognises what we once saw as learning disabilities or learning difficulties, and they're now better understood as normal differences in the way that people's brains develop, and how they're likely to have been an essential part of our evolution as a species. So the disabilities and/or difficulties we associate with people who experience these conditions are now better seen as issues with our teaching systems and with expecting everyone to learn in the same way. So you might also have heard the terms neurodivergent and neurodiverse. So neurodivergent is the more accurate term and the one that is being increasingly used. But to explain the difference, the neurodiverse population consists of both neurodivergent and neurotypical individuals. And although any neurodivergent individuals embrace their condition and society is increasingly recognizing the value of diverse experiences, some individuals, especially those with severe presentations of some of the conditions such as autism, argue that labeling these conditions as a normal variation downplays the challenges that they might face. They can sometimes feel overlooked, especially in debates about whether these conditions should be cured or fixed. And often they express that if given the choice, they would prefer not to experience their condition and its impacts. So it's important to acknowledge that there's no one size fits all experience when it comes to neurodiversity. And while we aim to reduce the stigma and embrace that diversity, we must never disregard an individual's perspectives. So the conditions that are generally agreed to under the neurodivergent umbrella are ADHD, autism or ASD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette's syndrome, and mental health. Because it is suggested that certain mental health conditions should be considered under the neurodivergent banner as well. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about autism, ASD and ASC, which I will explain a little bit more of an introduction about, and then looking at Lucy's lived experience with the condition, and she will be telling us a little bit about her background. So Autism or autistic spectrum condition, which is the ASC, is a lifelong developmental disability which affects how people communicate and interact with the world. And that definition is from the National Autistic Society, and it was published in August 2023. So autism spectrum disorder, which is the ASD, is sometimes used particularly within medicine and healthcare. You might have heard the term high functioning autism. It's often used to describe people who might not appear to experience significant social challenges and/or individuals considered to be without intellectual disabilities or with an average or above level intelligence. So high functioning is not used in any diagnostic sense, and the term can also be problematic as lived experience of the majority of autistic people includes challenges that they highlight as not being accurately reflected when we use this term. High functioning also infers that there might be people that we consider to be low functioning, and this is not the case. And sometimes it can just serve to reinforce those stigmas. We should also note that there is Asperger's or Asperger's syndrome being another term that you might have heard as a description of a person's autism. And this term is used fairly widely, again, with people with autism who have had maybe an average or above average intelligence. Asperger's syndrome was a diagnostic term until 2013. The classification took its name from Hans Asperger, who made observations of differences between autistic children. A significant factor in the decrease of popularity of the term was that Asperger himself was linked to the Nazi regime and was responsible for sending many autistic children to their deaths. So that is one of the reasons why the term isn't so commonly used anymore. But it is important to note that Asperger's or ASPI are still relatively common terms that someone with autism may use to self-identify. However, neither term would now be appropriate for a non-autistic person to use. Okay, so on to some lived experience. We're going to talk to Lucy now about some of her experiences, and we're going to start with looking at you growing up. Lucy, we'll start with growing up in your education. Start at the beginning for your story.
It was interesting what you just said, actually, because although I was diagnosed with suppose autism when I was coming up to my 40s, actually, so 7 or 8 years ago, but I very much when I have to explain it, I tend to still use the term Asperger's because to me that better fits in with my experience of perhaps not having any sort of learning difficulties, and it also a lot of people were very familiar with that term, I think, and I feel as though it's better represents sort of my experience, even though it was removed from the diagnostic criteria by the time I actually got my diagnosis. It's still a term that quite a lot of us still use. So I had no awareness of autism as I was growing up in the 1980s. It wasn't something that was really high on the awareness scale at that time, and certainly it was something that seemed to be more applicable to sort of boys, in particular boys perhaps that were non-verbal or were on very gifted, particularly in maths and that sort of thing. But as a girl, that I didn't really fit into those sort of stereotypes. So there was no awareness that or sort of knowledge that I was any different from the other children I was growing up with, and certainly within my family who were all very similar to me. So it was never something that was raised as a concern. I went to a highly academic school, which really suited me. I was very academic, was always working very hard, and that was how I proved my worth. It was all through academic achievement. I'm very competitive. Didn't like to come second at all. I'd find that really upsetting, and this especially applied in terms of working through my music grades. I spent a lot of time, I suppose my special interest was music, piano playing, and that was a way that that was how I made my mark, because I really struggled to have any sort of friendships or friendship groups as I was growing up, and particularly as in my teenage years, I really didn't have any sort of real friends at school. I just didn't know socially how to join in. I've always felt like I'm in a glass jar with a lid on the top, whereas I can see and I can observe and become really good at sort of play acting and seeing how people fit in with each other. But it was never something, I couldn't quite get out of that glass jar and break through and be sort of myself with people or feel part of a group. And that's really hard as a teenager growing up. So I was always an outsider. I don't think I was ever bullied at school, but also one of my things is I wouldn't necessarily pick up on if people were treating me badly. I've had people say to me, both in my school years and in employment situations as well, oh, I don't know how you put up with that, but often it just doesn't register to me. But looking back, I think perhaps some of my so-called friendships were quite unhealthy, and perhaps I was bullied, but I didn't pick up on it. I was perfectly happy within my family group and within the music groups that I took part in, and with sort of going down an academic route.
Do you think the kind of awarenesses of your differences are now more obvious to you now you're older and you've had your diagnosis than they were to you at the time?
Oh, definitely. One of the reasons that I decided to sort of pursue a diagnosis was to help myself understand some of the experiences that I'd had growing up and some of the ways that I'd struggled to think, well, why am I like that? Why have I found things a lot harder? Why don't I quite seem to fit in with people? So definitely looking back now and reading so much about it, and there's so many people on social media, there are books available in which people describe their experiences, and it's as if the jigsaw's all sort of fitting into place for me now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you. And if we move on then to look at your working life, so are there anything to do with job applications, interviews, any good or bad experiences or advice that you'd like to share with the audience?
Definitely. I've had quite a varied working life. I started straight out of university doing office work, doing IT work, but I never felt as though it was sort of fulfilling enough for me, and something I'd always wanted to do was to go into teaching. So I went into primary school teaching, and I was a really good primary school teacher in front of the classroom, because when you step in front of a classroom, it's almost like it's that play acting. You put a mask on and that's your role, you're the teacher. So I got on really well in the classroom. The areas that I struggle with tend to be sort of workplace politics, and working with perhaps with other members of staff and picking up on sort of all hidden meanings, hidden agendas that I've often found people had. In terms of interviews then, I've only recently become braver with my understanding to know what works well in interviews now, because in the past I just go along with whatever was offered for me. But I now know it's really useful to ask for questions in advance to help me prepare what I want to say. And also to make sure I ask the right kinds of questions about the company, so the workplace culture as well, because that's something as well that can make the difference between whether I want to stay working with a company and whether I'm happy there or not. Once I start a job now, I would definitely appreciate having a sort of a mentor and a really open relationship and catch-ups in which I can just express any worries or anxieties that I might have, and it's also a good place for them to give feedback to me, because sometimes, as I said before, I don't always pick up on things unless they're made explicit to me. Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
So is there anything that you would say that would create a barrier for you for applying for a job? Obviously, we've worked out what would work for you with interviews, but if you were looking for a new job, say, what would be a kind of a barrier for you in kind of that first look of a job?
Well, when I was in teaching, a lot of the job descriptions would say things like, you have to be 100% dedicated and committed, and that would be really off-putting for me, because I have very strong boundaries between my working life and my family life, so I know that I want a job in which I can keep those boundaries. So I'd certainly be put off by any job that implied I'd have to give my life to a company. Also, job descriptions, I used to go through them with a really fine tooth comb, and I think part of that's to do with me wanting the sort of a perfectionism thing. I wouldn't apply, and I'd overthink. If I didn't meet one or two criteria, it would put me off applying for the job at all. But nowadays, I realise that job descriptions are more like a wish list, and to try to not take them too literally. I'm also put off by job descriptions that talk about things like team player and fun social events and cultural life of a company, because my learned experience is that those aren't necessarily areas I feel really comfortable in. So yeah, I'm a lot more choosy now as well, I think, about making sure a company's right for me, as well as thinking, do I have the qualifications? It's really important for me that I work somewhere that sort of aligns with my values, and that I think I'm doing something that's important and worthwhile, which is sort of one of the reasons I enjoy working with AbilityNet at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've highlighted something there, that the language in job descriptions is so interpreted so differently by so many people. So the example that you gave was saying you need to give 100% to this job. Some person might see it as, oh, I need to give 100% of me, everything that I have.
I'd take it seriously. If I saw that and got that job, that is what I would be thinking
Yes,
I needed
that
to
would
do.
be
Yeah,
100% you, whereas it was
yeah,
probably not written in that context. But
no.
yeah, it's definitely about being mindful of that language and how that is interpreted by different people, definitely. So what about interviews, Lucy? How do you do with interviews?
Yeah, I quite like interviews because I like talking about myself, and I think I come across fairly well in interviews. As well, I'm so keen and eager to impress as well, that the interviews, sometimes I forget that interviews are a two-way process, and I need to find whether I'd enjoy working for that company and whether that company would give me what I wanted, because sometimes I get so carried away, and it's that competitiveness again, thinking I want to get every single job that I go for. So yeah, but interviews, what I don't like about interviews is waiting for feedback afterwards. I like to know the time frame of when I'm going to hear back from a company, because I don't at all like the uncertainty of having to wait. I find that really difficult to concentrate on other things if I'm waiting to hear back from someone.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before having questions in advance, and typically I've seen, especially in my work delivering to clients over in the workplace sector, questions in advance is a very often controversial topic. But I have to say, in my opinion, sorry, my voice is going now.
Tapping over the
um,
computer.
in my experience, and now working in the role that I work in, and being fortunate enough to work with colleagues with many different conditions, I think I would say that questions in advance, the positives of it far outweigh the negatives of it. And I always think, you know, unless you are interviewing for a role where a specific part of the role is that, you know, they have to be thinking on their feet really quickly because someone's going to fire a question at them that needs an immediate answer, you know, wouldn't you rather be interviewing people who have taken the time to think about their answers to their questions, because that's what you want them to do in a role? You know.
Definitely, it's really important to me that what I say is authentic, and sometimes it can take a while to sort of get my thoughts in order and I like to consider what I'm going to say. People sometimes think, oh, she's really quiet and she doesn't have anything to say, whereas actually it's that I like to think carefully and what I say is really meaningful. And that's why having questions in advance allows me to really think about it, what I want to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything, Lucy, that you could suggest from your perspective that might be kind of what you would consider to be good practice that people might want to think about when they're looking at their recruitment or onboarding of any new staff?
In terms of recruitment, I think we've already talked sort of about the language, about knowing in advance how the recruitment process is going to work, whether there's going to be some sort of technical test or presentation to give. So having that structure can help a person decide if they want to go through that process. It's also really good that if somebody is successfully recruited and then being onboarded, that they are asked questions about things like how they like to be communicated with, and thinking about how they learn best. People work in different ways. I like to learn by sort of having a go and trying things out and getting feedback. Other people prefer to learn by sort of watching videos or learning. So, and one thing that really helps me is having named people that I can go to ask questions of, and to be encouraged to ask open questions and not feeling that I'm going to be judged in some way for asking questions. Because if I ask someone a question, most of the time I've thought long and hard about how to resolve that problem on my own first. So by the time I've actually got the courage, if you like, to ask that question, it's something that I'm seriously thinking about. So I need to be confident and comfortable with the person I'm talking to. Yeah.
Absolutely, brilliant, thank you. So
And
so
yeah, I also
next,
think all these things don't just benefit me or other people with autism. I think they've got a positive for everyone. So, and they're quite easy.
absolutely.
They're easy things to do, aren't they?
And as we always say, if it's things that you start to do as standard, you know, you build these into your practices, you're helping not only everyone that might have shared a condition with you, you've also got them in place to help people that, you know, might not have felt confident to share that condition with you, or for whatever reason they haven't felt that they wanted to share with you. But if you're building these inclusive things into your practice, they're just there anyway, so they can benefit from them without having to ask for them.
Definitely. And yeah, I found that the older I've got, the much better I am to learn from experience the things that I need and to ask for them. I
Yeah,
think that's helped
absolutely.
a lot.
So now we've got some things that help you, Lucy. Do you want to take
Okay.
us through these? I will step
Yeah,
through them
if
when
you
you're ready.
click on them when I'm ready. So the first thing I've put is to thinking about some energy levels, because certain activities, particularly sort of socializing, can take a lot of energy from me. I can find really exhausting. So I've learnt over the years how to replenish my energy levels. And the way I do this is by spending time sort of getting really absorbed in things that I enjoy. And this is it's not just a fun add-on for me, it's a non-negotiable part of looking after myself. If I don't take the time to do this, then somewhere along the line, I know that I'm going to burn out and not be able to manage my day-to-day tasks. So the kinds of things that I find, this is going to be different for everyone. For me, it's doing sort of creative work, like sort of doing my piano practice, doing my artwork and other things. I think it's all about getting absorbed in the flow of activity, and that helps my mind to switch off from everything else that's buzzing around me. So my second thing that I've put is to make sure that I can manage my surroundings to how I need them at that time. And it's so easy. I feel so fortunate now to be able to work from home. It's I need to be in control of noise levels around me so that I can concentrate. Sometimes I wear some noise cancelling headphones, but other times I like to have the radio on and music playing. I like to be able to adapt my surroundings and the things that I've got around me as well. I find it really hard to be able to concentrate on what people are saying if there's any sort of background noise. So when I have calls and meetings, so the noise cancelling headphones are really important to me, particularly sometimes I think I can actually hear electricity going through the wires. I'm really, really sensitive to noise and need my quiet time as well. The next one that's really important and something I've learned from sort of experience is that I need to tell myself it's okay to take a break when I'm feeling tired or overwhelmed with everything, rather than trying to push through and sort of overcome or berate myself for sort of not being able to cope. So it's really important that I don't try and push through sort of warning signs of feeling exhausted, because I know it takes a lot longer to recover if I push through and ignore any signs that I'm tired than just taking a break when I need it. And that's not just in my work life either, it's sort of in family situations. Sometimes it's necessary just to remove myself from a situation to avoid sort of any ongoing repercussions. The next one I've put is about communication, so about finding what types of communication work best for me. So I like communicating by written words, as this gives me time to process my ideas and then to be able to express them clearly. I find it very hard to be put on the spot with questions and having to give answers straight away, because as I said before, it's really important to me that I'm very precise and accurate in how I sort of give feedback or answer any questions. And I found that being really clear with my line manager about this has really helped, because if somebody says to me, "Oh, Lucy, I need to chat with you at 3 o'clock today," I will then spend the rest of the day being quite anxious about what that chat's going to be about, and that can impact on my other work. Whereas if they're able to say, "Lucy, I want to talk to you later today about this particular question I've got," well, that puts my mind at rest, and it also allows me to sort of prepare myself in how we're going to talk about it. And the next one I've put is about strategies. So I plan and put my own strategies into place over a day or over a project to help mitigate any changes or surprises. And this is when having sort of meeting agendas and sharing project planning is really helpful. I often have a tree diagram in my head that I work through, usually first thing in the morning. If I'm awake early worrying, I have a tree diagram that and I plan all different possibilities and how I'm going to deal with things ahead of time. And I suppose that gives me a sense of control over what I need to manage and helps me to prepare for them. It's really important for me that I can play to my strengths, but also that I'm happy now to ask for help if I do find things challenging. I've learned that certain activities can make me feel uncomfortable, so I I often find alternative solutions or different ways to approach things. And I know that one of my skills is that I'm creative in how I problem solve. And I know also that when I'm sort of clear about what I need to do, I can work really quickly. And I often as well can spot details that other people might miss. So yeah, working from home is a great bonus as well for me, because it's a lot clearer to pick up on things through written communications like Slack or email than being in a real life situation when I would have to read body language or have to be expected to make eye contact with people or navigate through small talk, all of which I've learned how to do. I can make eye contact. I can know small talk. I've not got a problem with knowing how to do it, but it takes a lot of energy from me and it's not something that I enjoy. So yeah, if I was working with someone, I'd want them to, I wish they would understand that I choose my words really carefully. I only say things when I mean them, when I'm serious and when I'm 100% committed to doing what I've said. And I would love to be able to expect that from the other people that I'd work with. It would make, I think it would make things a lot clearer. It would make projects be a lot more straightforward and successful, and avoiding people picking up on sort of different meanings and perhaps not being clear about what other members of the team mean.
Absolutely, thank you. And then next, we've got your top 5 tips
Oh,
for
my
inclusive communication.
Oh yes, I was asked to write some tips what I would like people to know. So the first one I put is then these tips that apply to everyone, not just to me, and everybody's different as well and will have different preferences. So the first one I've put is just to ask people how they prefer to communicate. Nobody's going to be offended if they're asked, and nobody either is going to be offended if you use a certain terminology that perhaps they don't identify with, as long as they know that you're open to to perhaps change that if they express that they don't like it. So people have different views. Some people like to be referred to as an autistic person, as I said earlier. Other people sort of identify as having Asperger's, and some people don't want to refer to it at all. They don't see sort of any sort of need to at all. So it's just best to ask, because then people are going to feel comfortable in expressing their own preferences. So the next one I've put, is really related, is to use clear language. I wish people would just sort of say what they mean. If you don't say what you mean, you're not going to get the responses that you need. So get to the point without feeling the need to have to indulge in lots of small talk. So avoid sarcasm if it's not needed in a professional environment. Idioms can be tricky, because if somebody uses certain idioms with me, instead of concentrating on what they're trying to say, in my mind I'm getting images coming up and different things happening, and I'm not able to concentrate on what they're saying. I understand idioms, I use them. I've got a degree in English literature. I don't have a problem with language, but I can find it really sort of distracting. I think I'm very much a visual thinker, and using figurative language can cause me to perhaps focus on all the pictures I'm building up in my mind, except and not concentrating what I perhaps should be. Number 3 is I've put related to sort of visual thinking. Use visual aids to demonstrate concepts like diagrams or flowcharts. Sometimes it's all well and good to have sort of written instructions as an option. Sometimes these aren't very well written, and it can be a lot clearer to have sort of a flowchart that you can work through to help make a decision, or a diagram to explain something in at at one glance, rather than having to trawl through lots and lots of words that could potentially be misinterpreted. The next one I've put, what I'd like people to sort of think about providing schedules and agendas in advance, because this allows time for planning and thinking things through, and also for them to sort of ask for feedback. So people know that they're able to express any ideas without causing offence or being judged, respecting sort of preferences about things like video calls, about whether you have to have your camera on, or whether you prefer written notes for a meeting, or whether you prefer to communicate your ideas in advance in writing, or be put on the spot and talk about them in a meeting. So really it's about allowing people to be able to respond in the way that best suits them and that they prefer, because often people have individual preferences. In terms of listening, again, I was thinking about, I can be very sensitive as to whether I think people are interested in what I'm saying or not. That's I think that's probably to do with things like body language. So it's important to get feedback for me on what I'm saying. Also, don't judge people for jumping into conversations. It can be really hard, I know, I find it really hard, especially in telephone calls, to know when it's appropriate to say something. Sometimes an idea will pop into my mind, and I really want to get it out there, out in the open. And sometimes I don't choose the most appropriate time to give that idea. But if I know in advance that there's going to be time at the end of the meeting or at the end of the call to do that, that makes me feel more comfortable that yes, I will be able to put my point across, and I don't need to worry about trying to find a gap in the conversation to do so. Yeah, and I think the last one I've put relates to everything really. It's just about being kind and non-judgmental about people, and respecting their preferences, and also thinking about sort of perhaps times when they might not have come across as they've wanted to, just getting clarification on what they actually mean and how they're feeling about a particular thing. So giving people a little bit of space and time to respond is so valuable.
Brilliant, thank you. And then about celebrating neurodivergent, because that's all what we want to do. That's what we want to do here today.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't want to be all doom and gloom about it, and I particularly often say to my son, who's been diagnosed as similar to mine, about some of the lots of positive things about the ways our brains work that maybe the majority of people's brains don't work as. I think some of the pluses are having clear communication, so not having all those hidden meanings behind things, about that we can be really good members of teams, because often we have different approaches to problem solving, different ways of looking at things, and we're often willing to put those ideas across. I think having to grow up and navigate a world that seems to be designed for a certain way of thinking for neurotypical people has meant that it's been necessary to develop a lot of self-awareness and also resilience in all the barriers we've come up against, all the sort of times we've found things difficult. I often think although they might have been painful at the time, I've learned so much from them, and that makes me able to support other people who might be going through difficulties, and also to approach sort of future things in a slightly different way. I think also my experiences have led me to being very compassionate towards other people, because you never know what another person might be going through, or what they might be thinking about, or what their needs might be. So to me it's so important to take somebody at face value, to not judge them in advance. So yeah, I like to think I'm very non-judgmental. To me, what I see is what I judge a person on. I don't sort of I accept people as they present themselves to me, I suppose I'm trying to say, rather than think of having lots of preconceptions about people. And I think sometimes this has led to my downfall, because I've always been very optimistic about people and taking them at face value, whereas sometimes perhaps I should have taken a more sort of cynical approach and looked at perhaps some of the motives that they had in the past. And another really good thing, from my point of view, is sort of attention to detail and organisation, and this has enabled me to do so much in life, and to be good at different things by having that attention to detail and that dedication to sort of achieving something, and sort of all the organisational skills that I've developed as ways of controlling my personal environment are a really good asset to have when you're involved in running a project in a professional capacity as well. Things get delivered on time and to a really high standard.
No, absolutely. I really relish, I would just say my opinion, I really relish the opportunity to work at a place like AbilityNet, where I get to work with lots of my colleagues that have different conditions. And when we all come together into a group to work, everybody brings so many different things to the table. And it's a fantastic experience to be able to work in. So yeah, now we just wanted to give an opportunity for anybody else to ask any questions to Lucy that they might have, share any thoughts and comments. There is a lovely comment in the chat that has come through, so thank you so much for sharing that. Again, the Slido is back up on the screen if you would like to ask something anonymously, but this is a safe space, and we invite you to ask any questions that you would like, and in a space where we are going to respect everybody's questions and ask anything that they would like.
Lots of people tend to ask questions about sort of their own children as well. I get a lot of questions, especially having taught in primary and special needs as well. It's something, and that's why I think it's really important to look at some of the positives and the benefits, and not just focus on perceptions people have of sort of things not being possible.
Yeah. We have
and
a
also it's very quiet
group today.
And also about that people ask, well, what was the benefit? What was the point of getting a diagnosis if you weren't going? It hasn't really affected my sort of education or things like that. So, but to me, it's made me a lot more kinder to myself, really, and more accepting and braver to ask for what I need, and to say when I don't need certain things.
Yes, was it almost maybe a relief for you when you finally got the diagnosis, just to have something solid, just where you knew?
Yeah, it's like a light going. I'm thinking, oh, that's why that happened.
Yes.
And that's
Heather, hi.
Question.
Hi there. Hi. Hello. Hi. My daughter's 18, and she got her diagnosis at 13 after various mental health issues, and it was anyway. She's had a dreadful time at school. Not really been able to attend a mainstream school, and then we tried a special school. It was far too late, and it was just blew her mind because it was too different. Anyway, she's doing fine. She's doing very well at college now. She's like yourself, Lucy. She's very academic and very focused and ambitious, and she's doing really well with her A-levels. My concern is I'm kind of projecting ahead when she goes into the workplace, because she really has to watch herself, pace herself, take time out, and kind of, it's really, I suppose she has different requirements to your average employee. Do you think by the time she gets to the workplace that employers will be a bit more kind of geared up towards understanding that and making allowances? I don't know.
I like to think so, but also I do think she's got a real head start. She's got her diagnosis and she's developing that self-awareness, because in the end she's got to rely on herself to know what her needs are and to look after herself, and also to be able to sort of take the time that she needs. I think she needs to be really careful about who she works for, and to perhaps look into sort of getting sort of support as well, and looking at the different options around that. I think I learned a lot through experience and through often through sort of negative experiences, I suppose, whereas hopefully with the understanding that she already has, hopefully she can avoid some of that, because I went through lots of different diagnoses that didn't quite fit.
Exactly.
So often overlaps with mental health issues as well.
Because I just kind of feel that, like your average job is 40 hours a week. I just don't think I don't feel that would be far too much for her. But I don't know, employers just seem to be quite inflexible in terms of giving people opportunity for part-time working, or do you think things are getting better now?
I think it very much depends on the company, and it also would depend on whether she felt as though she wanted to disclose her autism to a potential employer, but also if she didn't and then was in a job and had difficulties, she could disclose it then, and they would have to consider, I suppose, things like flexible working or shorter working hours. But if she knows what's available to her in advance, it gives her a head start.
At the moment she'd like to work in the film industry, and I don't really know what that would be like. That seems to be long hours and stuff. Anyway, she's only 18, we're a long way off. I'm just kind of like I'm probably getting ahead of myself.
I would recommend I'd recommend as well, Heather, just doing some research. So there's lots of schemes and government funding. It's called Access to Work, that's available for anybody, and because she does have a diagnosis, she would be eligible for access to work. Obviously that does come with, as Lucy said, her feeling that she wants to share her condition with her employer, but Access to Work is government funding for people in the workplace. If you go to our website, abilitynet.org.uk, there is a fact sheet on there about access to work, so it gives you a read. It's a few years off, and the government might change the remits of the funding, but it is there and available at the moment.
But at AbilityNet, we work with people who, through Access to Work, have either got sort of workplace coaching, or people that can support them with organisational tasks and that sort of thing. It's certainly worth looking into.
You can get funding for awareness training for the rest of the company and organisation as well for the conditions. So there's lots of things available.
I think we've just had a really positive message from someone on the meeting chat saying that, who's quite a lot younger, is 24, and she's going through a diagnosis at work, and she's just saying how much more open, how much there's a lot more awareness there is nowadays. So
yeah, it's lovely. Thank you so much, Lois. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
I think somebody's written a comment, diagnosed in his 40s, similar to me. If I could go back in time and had my diagnosis earlier in life, then I would have made some different choices about the workplaces I'd put myself in. I also would have perhaps recognised signs of burnout earlier, and just being kinder to myself, and understanding that there were reasons why I can't always do the same as other people. But somebody else has got their hand
no,
up.
I think it's just still Heather's.
Is that still
so it's fine, don't worry. Okay, so very quickly moving on, I'm very aware of the time that we're at. It's fantastic that you've had questions. We love talking to you, but I just very quickly want to take you through just a short list of apps that we've popped up here to support with autism. And again, we'll be sharing a copy of the slides. We are recording the session. I did forget to mention, even though I asked Catherine how it was going to go out, that the recording will be emailed to you all sometime next week once we've processed it all, so you can go back and look at these and have a little bit of a look into these yourself. But some of the apps that are available that might be of help to people with autism, or just generally as well, actually I use some of these apps myself. So the time management tools and alarms, so lots of these are now built into our phones, our tablets, our computers. You know, the smart speaker, whose name I won't say in case someone has one in the room and it sets it off. We have speech to text software, so this is sort of dictation software. Again, this is now built into a lot of our products. So if you are running Microsoft, it's built into Word and PowerPoint and Outlook for our emails, so we can dictate these and have it typed up for us. They are leaps and bounds more accurate than they used to be. So I speak to a lot of people who go, oh my God, it was so terrible. I had to spend twice as long editing my document as if I just typed it myself. I can attest that they have gone leaps and bounds. So if you tried it years ago, try it again now. You will probably see a vast difference. And we also have text-to-speech software. So this is software that reads aloud the text on the page. So this can be really good for proofreading, because we often hear things that we don't see on a page, especially if we've spent a really long time writing a document and we see what we think we have written, but we don't hear what we think we have written. And again, these are now built into to Microsoft, so they're inside of Word and Outlook, so you can access those. There are other pieces of software that you can pay for that you get to do the same thing. They have a little bit more functionality, but definitely starting off with those free and inbuilt ones is a good way to go to see if it's something that will help you. We have lots of task management apps available, things like Trello boards that people might be familiar of, which allow you to put tasks on a board and follow them through to the end. As well now, things like Teams do have inbuilt versions of that. Teams have something called Kanban now, which allow you to set up the boards. What's nice about Kanban and Trello is you can add an entire team to a project, and you can assign the different pieces of work to each person, and it's a really nice way of tracking how we go through. There's also mind mapping software, like as Lucy mentioned, being a very visual person and liking flow diagrams and things like that. Mind mapping software can be something that's really helpful. You can map out everything that you need to do in a project. And again, there's lots of different app versions of mind mapping software. It's definitely about personal preference. Some that use a lot more imagery, which would be great for visual learners, some that are more text based. So have a look at some of those, see what might work. And then just to mention again, that smart home tech. We've got so many things in our own homes now that we carry around in our pockets, in our mobile phones, smart speakers, smart TVs, just about everything is becoming smart now, smart vacuum cleaners. So there's so much smart home tech available now that can help you. What I will just let you know all about as well, if you go on, I've mentioned the AbilityNet website already about the fact sheets that we have available, but also on the AbilityNet website, we have something called My Computer My Way. We're super proud of this. We spend a lot of time with these articles, and My Computer My Way will give you step-by-step guides on how to turn on all of the accessibility features that are already built into your computer, your phone, your tablet. We cover everything. We've got all of the versions of Mac, we've got PC, we've got all of the versions of Windows, we've got iPhones, we do Android, and they are all on there, and they give you these real simple breakdown step-by-step guides of how to turn on all of those things that you probably didn't know were already in your machine. So I would highly recommend you go and have a look at that. I'm very aware that we have run over time, so I will just say now, we did have another section for comments and questions. If anybody does have something that they'd like to ask, please do pop it in the chat and we can answer it in the follow-up. But otherwise, I will hand over to Catherine to just finish up.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. So many things I want to say, so little time, so little voice, but thank you so much, both of you, Lucy and Lizzie, for your time, and just talking about how it's essentially just consideration, and it's knowing yourself, but it's also companies just putting things in place that will help everyone. You're not just helping neurodiverse people with some of these steps, you're helping people with, for example, providing questions before an interview. So simple, so effective. So thank you. Sorry. If you could do the next slide, please, Lizzie. So yes, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We've got a link here that you can hopefully, I don't know if you're able to click this link,
no, but
but
I'm just going to copy it into the chat.
Perfect, thank you. But we'll also send out an email post-webinar, so you can click the link in the email and give us your feedback. We'd love to hear what you thought of today's webinar with AbilityNet. If we could have the next slide, please. Perfect. So this is our next webinar. If you head to our mailing list at the address there or scan the QR code, we'll get an email as soon as the information is out about our next webinar, which is happening in April. Again, it's always a free webinar and all of our engineering community are invited. So yeah, next slide, please. We mentioned earlier if you would be so generous as to donate to us, but there are other ways to get involved as well. For example, getting involved with an event. We've got some runners in the Brighton Marathon coming up, I think next month. But there are some other challenges on our website you can have a look at and see what you might like to get involved with, if anything. Next slide, please. And usually I would read through all this, I will spare you that, but this is how you can connect with us, whether or not if you'd like to get in touch with us because you'd like to get involved, or if you would like to get Foothold support because you're having a difficult time and struggling in one of the areas we're able to help, please do get in touch. We would love to speak with you and see what we can do to support you. Yeah, thank you so much to the team at AbilityNet. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Lizzie. Looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts and the feedback. Then we'll send the link out very soon. And happy rest of Neurodiversity Celebration Week, everyone. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.